There is just no point trying to make a long distance relationship work. They're doomed from the start. You're both going to just get depressed, be angry at one another, and the relationship is just going to crumble to the ground. So yeah, it's just a bad idea.
Is what people often say about long distance relationships, but is that actually true?
Well, Usama and I sit before you today as happy survivors of a long-distance relationship that lasted almost 3 years and spanned across 3,500 miles and a 5-hour time difference. And we want to give you our 10 top tips on surviving
and thriving
in a long-distance relationship. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another couples video. My name is Shireen, aka Halal Girl New York, and I'm an internal medicine doctor.
And my name's Usama, aka Real Skin Doctor, and I am a dermatologist.
We both work and live together here in Manhattan, and we both actually have our own individual YouTube channels. But every now and then we combine forces to come together for a couples video just like this one.
So Shireen and I were in a long distance relationship for around 3 years between 2015 and 2018. I was 2 years ahead of Shireen in medical school, and that meant by the time I graduated and went to the US, there was a multiple year delay between when Shireen would be able to join me. During this time, we had to put up with a 3,000-mile distance, my crazy work hours in intern year and also during my application cycle, a 5-hour time delay, and Shireen finishing off medical school of all things.
On paper, that sounds like an absolute nightmare, right? And even thinking about it now makes my heart sink. But alhamdulillah, thanks to God, we have no doubt in our minds that our 3 years of long distance actually made us even stronger as a couple today. So having been through it and experienced it ourselves, we wanted to sit together and give you guys some advice for anyone who might be facing the same struggle.
Number 1, communication is key. We are all so spoilt these days. We're no longer living in the 1990s where you had to make telephone calls by the minute and pay a charge for it. We live in the world with FaceTime and WhatsApp, so there really is no excuse for you to not be able to stay in touch on a daily basis. Yes, your daily schedules are going to change, and there's going to be some times where it's not possible to have that 1-hour FaceTime catch up every night, but that's okay. On those days, you can still drop a WhatsApp message, say, oh, how are you? I miss you. When are we next going to be able to talk? Things like that.
I've met some couples who've been in long distance and they mention that they only speak to each other once a week, and I can't actually ever imagine that for us. For us, we did speak every day. I think if it's someone who you're absolutely committed to, who you're married to, or you're about to marry, how can you even survive more than a couple of days without knowing what they've been up to in their day-to-day? Like, wouldn't you intrinsically have that interest in wanting to know what someone's been up to? So I think talking to each other every day, sharing the little details really helps you feel like an active part of that other person's life, even in the long distance.
You may actually find that surprisingly you end up as way better listeners by the end of that long distance experience. I think those habits we built of listening actively to each of our days and stories from those years ago have given us these really useful habits even now, where we still have that pattern of sitting down each evening without our phones and listening to our stories from the day.
What I've noticed is that couples who've never had to be in long distance have never actually carved out the time to sit together and really listen to each other's daily stories. So they've never had to exercise that muscle and don't actually become as active listeners when it comes to their day-to-day relationships.
Communication is also key to maintaining a long distance relationship with your favorite YouTube creators. So this is a great opportunity for you to comment below and introduce yourself, because we read every single one of those comments.
Number 2, set realistic expectations. Communication is key, but on the flip side, it's really important that you sit together and discuss your expectations for how much time the other person realistically has.
So as an intern, I was working really long hours, and sometimes I'd come back from the ICU at say 9:30 or 10 p.m. at night. If at that point Shireen had insisted on us having a 2-hour catch up and was angry that I seemed tired or not interested in her stories, that would have felt unfair to me, and it would have probably been pretty annoying. You always have to come back to the fundamentals and remind yourself that this is the person you care about the most, and you're the person that they care about the most. And if at any point either of you are upset because they haven't had enough time to talk, that's coming from a place of love, and you should take it as kind of a compliment and that it's a little bit sweet rather than getting angry at that.
One thing you can do, especially if there's a time difference in your long distance relationship, is to actually sit down and schedule times where you speak to each other, whether that's on your daily commute to work or after work. It's really important that you really set aside that protected time to get to.
Number 3, trust is absolutely essential. If you're really concerned that the person you plan to spend the rest of your life with needs you to be physically close by, otherwise you're going to be worried that they'll cheat on you, I think that's a bit of a red flag. The kind of person that you don't think you can trust in a long distance relationship is the kind of person that you also probably shouldn't trust in a short distance relationship. I mean, think about it. Each morning, you both leave the door and you spend 10 hours outside in the world and you come back. If you have suspicions about someone, can you really be sure that even in those 10 hours, 5 minutes down the road, they're not doing something that you're going to disapprove of? So if this is a big concern looming on your mind, you might want to ask yourself, what is it about your partner's previous behavior that makes you so concerned? And if there really are grounds for concern, you might want to ask yourself, is this long distance relationship actually something worth investing in? Ooh, I've caused some beef here.
Usama stirring the pot. Alternatively, you need to look within yourself as well. Are you being suspicious for no reason? Are you just being jealous? I know that it's possible to get these feelings without any basis, but you really need to look within yourselves and reflect on that and make sure that you build upon that fundamental pillar of trust, which is the most essential thing for any successful relationship. For me personally, sometimes when I was in London and Usama was in New York, I would catch up with my friends and some of them would ask things like, are you concerned that there might be an American girl out there in New York?
Which friends were these? I want names.
No, let me finish the story. Let me finish. Some of them would say, hey, aren't you worried that there's an American girl out there who's really into Osama because of his British accent or something? But honestly, that never worried me even for a second because I know Osama, I know what he's like, and we had that understanding and trust within each other before we went into long distance. So it was never something I had to stress about or worry about. And I'm sure it was the same for him too.
And I also hired a private investigator who followed her most days of the week.
Number 4, always plan your next visit. In a long distance relationship, you really need hope and you need something to look forward to. For me and Osama, I was in medical school and I still had 2 to 3 years before the end of the long distance. We knew that there was a set in stone amount of time before we could end the long distance relationship. So I needed these regular visits to give me something to look forward to. So instead of taking it as one big chunk of time, like that 2 to 3 years, we would just look forward to the next time we would see each other and be reunited, and that would really give us a lot of hope and something exciting to look forward to.
So I spent all of my vacation weeks going back to the UK in intern year, and Shireen also had 2 weeks where she was able to come to the US. So that meant that even though we were in long distance for 2 to 3 years, I think the longest stretch of time we ever went without physically seeing each other was about 4 months.
4 months.
Yeah, which was pretty depressing and felt like a really long time, but at least it was better than 2 to 3 years.
Tip 4.5 is actually a secret bonus tip. Now, we cannot emphasize this point enough. One of the absolute keys to both of you surviving this long distance relationship is subscribing to both of our YouTube channels.
Loyalty and commitment are crucial ingredients in a long distance relationship. So if you can't even commit to these YouTube channels, honestly, what chance do you have?
What's the point? Why are you doing it for?
Red flag. Number 5 is having the end goal in sight. You should know when the long distance is going to end, you should talk about it, you should plan for it, and you should allow yourselves to daydream about that future life together that you're going to build once the long distance ends.
For me and Osama, when we would FaceTime, we would daydream about our future together. We would daydream about the biggest things like our future home and our future family, inshallah, to even the tiniest of things like going on a walk in Central Park or, baking a cake together or even taking out the trash. I would literally daydream about the smallest things and it would get me so excited about our future.
Well, you can make that dream come true and take out the trash tomorrow morning if you'd like.
No, but I'm over that part now.
Oh.
But you guys who are still in your long distance relationship, it's very romantic. Point number 6, find creative ways to show your love. Now, when we were in long distance, I was in medical school and Osama was an intern here in New York. So let's be honest, we didn't have any savings.
And we still don't.
You really don't need to be spending a lot of money and buying each other designer items to show your love. You can find really creative ways to express your love. Over the years, Osama sent me bunches of flowers on special occasions and he wrote me letters. And I'm sure the words would have been really sweet if I could actually read his terrible handwriting. My favorite thing that I sent for Osama was actually a watercolor painting that I did of one of our favorite pictures together. And I sent it to him in the mail and it said, "Miles apart, but together at heart."
Aww. Number 7, know that you are not alone. As humans, whenever we're going through a tough time, we start to tell ourselves that we are the only people in the world going through that particular situation. So when you're in a long distance relationship, suddenly you'll look around and the entire world will be paired off in beautiful couples having amazing times together, and you'll be the only sad loser by himself.
For us, when we were in long distance, I felt like all of my friends got married in that time, so I went to so many weddings by myself. always ticking that no +1 box on the invites. My sister would bring her husband, my friends would bring their significant others, and I would just be staring at the empty seat next to me, wishing that Usama could be there at that time.
And I would be secretly celebrating the fact that I didn't have to go to all of those weddings because I absolutely hate them.
But just know that you're not alone. There are so many thousands and millions of couples who are currently in a long distance relationship. And for me, reflecting on couples who successfully made it through gave me that glimmer of hope, knowing that it was definitely possible and in fact can actually make you come out of the other end stronger. Number 8, build on your current relationships. Let's be honest, long distance relationships kind of suck, but there can be some silver linings. Now, we all know how it is. When you're in a committed long-term relationship, you can accidentally find yourself neglecting some of your other friendships and even some of your family. So when I was apart from Usama during those 3 years, I was able to really invest in my current friendships. So all those friends I have in London who I don't get to see on a daily basis anymore, I really got to spend extra time with them and build memories that we look back on so fondly now. And I was living at home with my parents and siblings, and I got to spend extra time with them, and that time together means so much to me now that I'm away from them and we're together. So that was the biggest silver lining for me.
And I was able to invest way more time into my relationship with my team on FIFA. And together we achieved incredible things, including an undefeated treble-winning season in career mode on legendary difficulty. Number 9, get closer to God and trust in God. Often when we're going through times of hardship, we find that is when we end up getting the closest to God. For Shireen and I, faith plays a really big part in our lives. So asking God for help, asking Him for strength in times of difficulty, you might find that you develop an even more enduring connection to God, and that could be the best possible outcome of your long distance relationship.
And finally, number 10, know that it will all be worth it in the end. Honestly, our time apart makes us even more appreciative of each and every day we get to spend together now. It's really not an exaggeration to say that around once a week, we'll be just sitting on the sofa, we turn to each other and we say, imagine how much we would have given to just sit on the sofa next to each other like this and watch Netflix back when we were in long distance. And then that just makes us enjoy that generic moment even more than if we had never been in long distance. So just know in your heart of hearts that after all that struggle, all that hardship, it will be worth it in the end.
Unless you're with the wrong person, in which case it really wasn't worth it.